What is up, EOS community? My name is Steph. I'm your host. This is the new Everything EOS Livestream. Great to be back with everyone. Love seeing all the familiar names in the chat already. Let us know where you're tuning in. Drop your city, drop your country. Might as well drop your EOS account too. You never know. And it's absolutely great to be back. I'm excited for the show. Got a bit of butterflies, not gonna lie. There's a lot of work that's gone into this show. Shout out to Liam from the ENF. He's live with us backstage, helping produce the show. He's done a lot of work. We got a lot of great content. We got great guests. We got pre-recorded content. All sorts of stuff coming at you today. Love to see all the names in the chat. And you know what else actually is today that has me pretty hyped? This is day number 2000 of uninterrupted EOS network action. That's right, 2000 days, no downtime, just straight EOS blocks every 0.5 seconds. Very impressive. I don't think any L1 can compete with that. So here, let's see who we got here in the chat. We got Wayne from London. We got Mel from London as well. Jeff from Spirit Blockchain. I like it. What's up, like EOS? Brandon in the house. Max Cho. All right. So what do we have today going on? We got a couple different segments for you. We're going to start it off with the EOS Ecosystem Spotlight. If you know what the EOS hot sauce was all about, this is kind of like that. I'll be going over some news, but this time all of the news is community submitted. Then we're going to my most anticipated segment of the day, the Big Beard Banter. So there's going to be a big beard. There's going to be banter. Even Zack will be chatting back and forth about a lot of interesting EOS related topics. And then I'll jump into the conversation. And then we'll talk maybe about some wider industry news in crypto. We got pre-recorded Fireside Chat with Wharf. Nathan James going to be taking this home for the last half of the show with a lot of developer related action, including a DevRel challenge with a 200 EOS prize. So wherever you're tuning in, I remind you to subscribe and like. If you are a fan of EOS, you're a fan of the show, you want us to continue to do more shows like this, you want Liam to continue to go above and beyond and get a bunch of great content ready for you guys. We need some engagement. We need some comments in the chat, some likes, some subscribes, some retweets, all of that stuff. All right. So like I hinted at the start of the show, we have a little contest going on today. If you drop your EOS account or your EOS EVM account address in the chat, in the comments, wherever you're listening, whenever you're listening, we'll be giving out 5 prizes of 10 EOS at the end of the week. And then, of course, the DevRel challenge with more EOS up for grabs. All right, so I'm already 5 minutes late on my timeline. So let's get into the EOS ecosystem news. Hey, that's me doing my own transition, rocking a green screen, some lights, a stream deck, new mic. We're decked out for this new show. I'm excited to use all of the gear and make a great show for you guys. All right, so this is the EOS ecosystem news section. There's a form you can use to submit your news. If you want me to update the community next month, make sure to submit your updates. We got about 6 or 7 updates this week, and so let's get into them. Hey, look at that. ZEOS first up with some updates on their new hybrid order book exchange that is now live on Jungle for Testnet. So ZEOS is thrilled to share with the community a solution for a decentralized hybrid order book exchange for Antelope blockchains. In addition to the hybrid order book, other features of the DEX include high chain performance order matching, on-chain history solution, decentralized front-end solution, and stop loss, stop limit order types, and also coming soon, private trading. The DEX is currently deployed on the Jungle for Testnet and can be found at dex.zeos.1, which you can see here on the 4-hour chart, some nice price action. So go over to dex.zeos.1, try out the DEX today, and to learn more about ZEOS, of course, follow them on Twitter at ZEOS on EOS. All right, so thank you, ZEOS, for submitting this piece of news and being the first story covered on the new Everything EOS live stream. All right, next up, more big news for our community. Spielworks acquires WOSDER.gg. So Spielworks is the company behind the Wombat gaming ecosystem and the top 5 NFT marketplace AtomicHub. They've acquired WOSDER.gg, a social app for gamers with over 1 million downloads. With this latest edition, the cumulative user base of Spielworks exceeds 7 million accounts. With this strategic move, Spielworks hopes to bring more engagement for quality gaming titles built on EOS, Wax, and beyond. So you can read more about this news on the Medium article that's been published and shared in the chat. And of course, you can follow WOSDER on Twitter at WOSDERGG. And while you're at it, why not follow Spielworks at Spielworks as well? All right, next up, we've got job board Web3 upgrade. So the job board task and job fulfillment built specifically for Antelope Chains is having a complete Web3 upgrade. This update will not only allow improved functionality and improved UX, but more importantly, integrate with the upscale dispute resolution, EOSDEN audit and reputation system for a complete DAO solution offering. Job board users will be able to post RFPs, tasks, jobs, and also pay for the work utilizing their EOS tokens through the inbuilt escrow system released at key milestone stages once happy with the work completed. Reviews on the work can be posted for all completed tasks, making for an improved reputation and hiring experience. Any disputes will go through the reputation system. Try it out at job-board.io and also learn more about Upscale at upscalenow.io. So shout out to Mel Pierce, dedicated EOS community member who submitted this update for job boards. Thank you very much. All right, next up, The Lost Diamond. Latest news. The Lost Diamond is a real-world adventure where the goal is to find the Lost Diamond hidden in one of the checkpoint NFT challenges placed all around the world. The value of the Lost Diamond is now $20. If you find it first, the smart contract on the EOS mainnet will pay out the amount in less than 3 seconds, regardless of where you are in the world. Learn more at thelostdiamond.io. All right, next up, big news from PlayZap, bringing 6 new games, a web launch, a publisher program, and more. In recent years, the gaming industry has witnessed a surge in the popularity of play-to-earn games. PlayZap is a platform that has taken this concept to the next level by combining play-to-earn with skill-based gaming. PlayZap launched on EOS in September and quickly became the most active DApp on the EOS EVM, according to DApp Radar. In 2024, the team plans to launch a web version of the platform with 20 or more games and a publisher program to bring Web 2 games into Web 3. That's what's up. Explore their games at playzap.games and learn more about them in the links shared in the chat. So here we also have, of course, their Medium articles that you can read for more information. And quickly just want to show this nice little chart, which has done kind of nicely since September. So seems like launching on the EOS EVM was a good decision for PlayZap and the PlayZap community. Love to see it. All right. Next up, we've got, well, you can follow them on Twitter as well, at PlayZap Games. Next up, we've got some news from EOSDEN, the digital extended networks. EOSDEN is a project that supports the EOS ecosystem in a number of ways, including audits and a new tool, Quizzes, that is available for any affiliate of EOSDEN to utilize in order to educate their community. Users are presented with quizzes, and once completed, they're automatically rewarded with a token prize. EOSDEN also recently announced a partnership with Haifa, fostering collaboration and building bridges across their organizations. Learn more about EOSDEN in the links in the chat. Shout out to Nova Crypto for submitting this update and doing a great job with EOSDEN. All right, so that wraps up the community submitted news. I hope to have more stories next month. I imagine we'll have more people submitting them. So if you didn't have the chance, didn't have time to submit, make sure to submit before next month's show. There's a submission form, which looks like this, that has been linked in the chat, which you can go to and submit your updates. Basically, we asked for a decent amount of information, a 30-second blurb that I can read word for word, and then more information that I can learn about your project or update in case there's more to share. And of course, all of these visual assets that Liam was showing while I was talking. All right, final little piece of ecosystem news before we go to our next segment. The POP token promotion has come to an end. Those tokens were kind of designed for the Fireside Chat that were happening on a weekly basis before. For this new show, we're not going to be continuing with the POP tokens. So there's no more new raffles to join. But if you are still holding some POP tokens, don't worry, they're not useless. They will be able to be used in an upcoming holiday promotion on EOS. So stay tuned to the ENF social channels to learn more about that. And thanks for everyone who participated in the POP tokens promotion while it lasted. All right, let's go back to the office. Here we are, and let's continue on with the show. All right, so next up, we've got the Big Beard Banter segment. So at this point, I'd like to invite Yves and Zack onto the stage with me. Hey, what's up, guys? How's it going?
Hey.
Hey.
Doing good yourself. I love the energy. This is awesome. Zack and I have been talking about doing something like this now for, what, 2.5 years? Like since actually maybe even before we started the ENF?
Yes.
Awesome.
Since the original Everything EOS, basically. I don't think this, we'll be doing this particular format every single month. But I think in between those, we'll do some ad hoc shows, shorter version of this with probably similar to this upcoming segment, but longer format. If you're not typically a short-winded person, I think we have a 35-minute time block here. I'm sure we're going to go over, and there's time at the end for an AMA. So we have Liam in the background watching the live chat. If you guys have questions during the next segment, please ask them in the chat. We're not going to be answering them immediately, but at the very last segment of this live stream, we will try to tackle as many of the AMA questions as we can.
Well, there you go, Zack. You kind of did my job there. So thanks for that. And I'm going to just step back and grab some popcorn and listen to the conversation.
Oh, there's one part of your job that you didn't do. I will do it for you. Anyone watching, smash the like button, hit subscribe, leave a comment, do everything you can to game this YouTube algorithm. Drop me some messages in the live chat, make it all lively. Look, the live stream just went up by like 3 or 4 already. Keep it up.
All right. Well done, Zack. All right, I'll talk to you guys in a bit.
Awesome.
All right.
Before we start, Zack, I just noticed that in the comments, like EOS said, that he submitted news about PayCash Listing on CMC, but that it wasn't mentioned. So I don't know if it was too late or whatever, but I'm mentioning it right now because I'm reading the comments. Seems like PayCash Listing on CMC. So shout out for like EOS for having mentioned that, and apologies, I guess, for it not having been in the previous segment.
Let's make it up for him. So a lot of what I want to do here. So I'm basically going to be prodding Yves with some pre-planned topics, and I want to dive deeper into a lot of the news that we've already made public, try to pull some alpha out of them. When we do the public announcements, oftentimes you got to simplify things and you lose some of the journey along the way, how the introductions were made, what's to come potentially. So with that project in particular, what was his name? Gino? The guy who messaged you about the PayCash project. What was the RWA stuff that they're doing in the background that sounded really interesting? Just one sentence on it.
Actually, I'm not too sure what you're talking about, who this Gino fella is, and I apologize if Gino was the name that reached out to me.
Maybe I'm getting confused. This is the DeFi project, right?
And also PayCash. Are we talking about PayCash here? What am I reading?
Yeah, PayCash.
I'm all confused now. Let me go back above. What does it say? PayCash listing on CMC. Okay,
fine. I will give them the compliment.
I was confusing with something else, so you want to go for it. Go for it. See, this is what happens when it's live. Nothing is scripted.
PayCash is actually a really cool project.
Yes.
And if you look on DeFi Llama, they actually, I don't have it in front of me right now, but they either have the top TVL or number 2 right behind DeFi Box. And a lot of people, when they think of DeFi on native EOS, they think of typically DeFi Box, but PayCash, very cool project.
I know what you're talking about before. You're talking about Eugene or Yevgeny,
Yes.
which I don't know. Like EOS, are you Yevgeny? I'm not too sure, but yes, PayCash has been doing, and that team has been doing amazing work in the background in terms of RWAs. Now I know what you're talking about because it's not Gino, but yes, I know what you're talking about. They've actually been. So I received this message from one of our community members that's been a known community member for a very long time now, and he was actually giving me kind of a rundown on, and yes, it is him. So like y'all, shout out. A rundown on all the things that they've done it in the past. And so correct me if I'm wrong, like EOS, but there was something about being able to, I think it was the tokenization of apartments somewhere. There was also being able to buy, if I'm not mistaken, something like oil barrels or shares in oil of some sort. Basically, the whole point was they've been doing RWAs before RWAs was cool. They've been working on this for a very long time. They've been leveraging EOS for this. One of their projects that is known is PayCash, but they have a slew of other projects that they've been working on, all leveraging EOS. And so huge shout out to that. So like EOS, in the future, please get in touch again. And yes, we'll definitely shut you out because you've been doing some really cool work in the background.
Look at that, man. They missed the Steph segment, but then they got the extra love. They beat the lead-in story, which is Spirit Blockchain Capital recently closed an investment round with EOS Network Ventures. So how did this deal come about? And let's go into a few of the nuggets that maybe weren't in the press release that was made yesterday.
So this came about Token 2049 this year. I was in Singapore. I was contacted by somebody who I guess an acquaintance on the EOS blockchain years ago, Paul Dubé. And he let me know that this other guy, Louis Bateman, would be in Singapore and that we should connect because there were potential synergies that could that could occur. Louis and I met in a Starbucks in Singapore. We started discussing. He kind of shared his vision of what they'd been working on at Spirit Blockchain and the acquisitions that we're making and kind of what role they wanted to play in the greater blockchain space. And obviously with the ENV, we have a fund and we've been looking at investing in projects, and it was just really good synergy. And so, fast forward a couple of months now, I guess 4 months, give or take, or 3 months, give or take day to day. We just announced this partnership yesterday and this investment from the ENV side of things into Spirit Blockchain Capital. Spirit Blockchain Capital is a publicly traded company in Canada. And so they actually have a stock and they're publicly traded. And kind of a piece of nugget information that really wasn't mentioned yesterday. We're still trying to fact check this. So anyways, it's kind of a alpha news in a way, but the investment that was made by ENV was made in EOS tokens. It is being basically being held in EOS tokens. And so it's going to be reported in EOS tokens on their financial sheets, because this is obviously a public traded company. So they have reporting functions. As you saw in the article yesterday that was put, there was actually details of the investment there. Again, because it's a publicly traded company, so you get more insights into what that investment is. But the point I'm getting at here is that it may be the first time that a publicly traded company receives investment from in crypto, essentially. If not the first time, it's definitely the first time on EOS. And it's quite monumental. So we're really looking forward to what they are working on and how this will help position EOS. They're currently licensed in Canada, in Switzerland, and in Dubai to be able to tokenize assets. And so this is the type of partnership where it bridges the gap between traditional finance and blockchain. And what we're seeing with what's coming in 2024, that kind of partnership is going to position us very well to be able to leverage what that could come up, what could come out of that. Now, if you want to go look at the investment itself as well, the way that it's positioned is really good. So obviously advocating for the ENV and advocating for EOS is part of our mandate. We have no choice. And you can go back in history as to why that might be important if you don't know why. That investment is actually made as a convertible loan. And so go and read. Everything is public, obviously, because it's a publicly traded company. So the investment terms, I guess, are very favorable for both. The ENV is getting a board seat on Spirit Blockchain Capital is basically board. And so we're going to be leveraging this to be able to open up more markets outside of the three that I mentioned. For example, with Hong Kong, I talked about when I was there a few weeks back, we met with Hang Seng Bank. Hang Seng Bank is the third largest bank in Hong Kong. They're a subsidiary of HSBC, which is the largest bank in Hong Kong. And so we're trying to position it so that we can also help them get licenses in Hong Kong, for example, and position so that EOS can have key positions within those markets for things such as, let's say, an EOS ETF and or more traditional EOS and I guess EOS listings or EOS opportunities within the traditional financial space. So very excited about this investment, and very excited working with the Spirit Blockchain Capital team and their portfolio companies that they've been acquiring as well over the last couple of months.
I was told I'm lagging, so I turned off the virtual background. I rebooted. I closed all the windows. So growing pains of the show. Apologize if I'm lagging on the live stream, but hopefully you could hear me loud and clear. There's one other nugget that we left out, and that was the tokenization, the licensing for RWA tokenization.
Yeah, you're lagging big time. So what is the question on that? Basically just mentioning that? Yeah, so they've got those licenses, right? In Canada, Dubai, and now I'm drawing a blank, and Switzerland right now. So the idea is to help them expand on that. But in those three markets, obviously very good. Even if we look at historically ETFs, if I'm not mistaken, some of the first ETFs in the world, if not the first ETFs in the world, came from Canada. Canada is seen as a player within this space in terms of advancing the goalpost forward. And Lewis, in particular, who's the CEO, that is his background. That's where he came from. He was key to that when that occurred almost 30 years ago now. And so that's the kind of positioning that we're trying to put forward with this strategic partnership with Spirit Blockchain Capital. And as part of that as well, if you go dig deep on their website, they recently acquired Troon Technologies. So going back to who put us in touch with Paul Dubé is leading Troon Technologies. They've been acquired by Spirit Blockchain. And so they've got this blockchain team inside to be able to take traditional assets and to be able to take standardized products right now that you can buy, stocks, bonds, etc., being able to link them to the blockchain. And obviously with this investment, it puts EOS at the forefront in terms of what's going to be utilized for those tokenizations.
There you go. Yeah, that's what I wanted to get out there, because those licenses, they take years to acquire. So this fast tracks a lot of things. All right, yeah. Next big piece of news, since they kind of happened back to back within a single week, and that's the trip to Turkey last week. So Yves, myself, Wachung, the CEO of EOS Labs, Joshua from EOS Labs, Beatrice from the ENF, Myra from D-Boost, who helps both EOS Labs and the ENF. We were all in Turkey last week. There are also several projects at whether they're EOS EVM projects, EOS projects, or projects that are most likely going to launch on the EOS EVM very soon. They were also in attendance. So Easy Swap, Zephyr, Noah Finance, and The Wake were all at this EOS meetup that we hosted with CoinTR. Want to introduce what CoinTR is for those who didn't catch the article, and what their where they fit in the Turkish ecosystem for blockchain.
You want me to do that, or are you going to announce that?
I could do it. So CoinTR, they are not the so I believe they're the number 2 or number 3 exchange by volume in Turkey. The Turkish market is the 4th largest market in crypto by trading volume. And CoinTR, they very recently, within the last, I would say, month, they hired an entire new executive team and chairman of the board. They all come from very high-level banking, regulator, backgrounds, government backgrounds, to really put the right people in place to kind of mold and shape upcoming regulations in Turkey. So by aligning with this particular team, we're really at the forefront of that. We can get into maybe some of the conversations and meetings, but literally conversations were had about, because Yves has been working hard with the Japanese regulators, the Hong Kong regulators, and really has a feel for what everyone else is doing and how they're kind of going from the wild west of crypto into what it needs to become. And that's really exciting. And their market will also be getting more regulated over time, similar to every other country, essentially. And they'll be in a very good position to take over market share. The other interesting nugget that I don't believe was in any of the public announcements was just how this partnership came about. So I'll toss the ball back to you, and you could kind of introduce how Huacheng and EOS Labs were able to bring CoinTR to EOS.
Yeah, I mean, maybe just even stepping it up a step, kind of even a higher level in terms of kind of the role of what EOS Labs does. And this is a prime example of the kind of work that they are positioned to be able to do and what they're really good at. So it's this type of partnership. And so Huacheng has been in the blockchain space now for years. I believe maybe 2015 or 16 or so. He was already in a prominent executive position within an exchange that was quite massive at the time, Huobi. And so he knows a lot of people from within the space that are essentially OGs of that time, right? So prior to 2017, which is, I think, one of the bigger bull markets. Obviously, there were a few before that, but that's when really it started gaining a little bit more traction. And he has a lot of contacts from within that time, and really good high-level contacts. And so he has been in communication with a lot of his ex-colleagues. And so this partnership came about through that. Obviously, as you mentioned, Turkey is a huge, massive opportunity. It's the fourth largest market for cryptocurrencies in the world right now. It's also a huge, massive gamers market, etc. Adoption in Turkey is very huge. Talking about, I was sharing earlier, when you go to the Istanbul International Airport, BTC Turk is if I believe BTC Turk and Paribur are the two largest. I believe BTC Turk is slightly bigger. When you're at the airport, you basically have BTC Turk everywhere. Like on top of every single gate that you're getting before you board your plane, stuff is BTC Turk. It's just everywhere. Everything is branded. So think of the equivalent of, poor example in hindsight, but FTX Arena in the United States, right? It's a big prominent sponsorship. Well, you've got this, but in the international airport, in Istanbul International Airport. And so Turkey as a leader within the cryptocurrency space is quite out there. And so we see this as an opportunity. Labs has been doing some tremendous work. This is just an example of what they've been doing in the very short period of time that they've been there. So that's what they're focused on. They're focused on that business development, more kind of the application layer, more of the outer facing, dealing with the outside world, bringing people into EOS. It's obviously focused on right now, getting applications in. So you mentioned a few earlier that they were there at the event. A lot of that's just through EOS Labs, and so it's just the continuation of what the ENF was doing prior. Those responsibilities have now shifted over. Part of the budget has now shifted over. So now you have an entity that's solely focused on this. This is their bread and butter. So when the ENF was first formed, obviously it was just you and I, there was nobody else. We did basically have to wear every hat. So every function possible that you would want a network to have, we had to do a little bit of everything. And there are certain things that we're just not really good at, or it's just not our bread and butter. And there are other things that we're really good at. So over the last 2 years, what we've seen is kind of a shift of, all right, what is the focus? What are the responsibilities? And where are gaps? Where are holes within what the architecture and the ecosystem, what's currently underway? And Labs is the result of that, right? ENV is also a result of that. And so we're seeing the responsibilities and kind of the focus of each entity coming into its own. And this CoinTR partnership is a prime example of that. And why that's particularly interesting, or why this is such a massive opportunity, is obviously as a chain, you need key partners. And one of the key partners in general that a chain wants to have are exchange support. We traditionally had a lot of that in EOS when EOS first launched. Not at this level, so slightly different. Obviously, the ecosystem and as a whole has changed since then. But think of this partnership similar to BNB or the BNB token with Binance, or the FTT token was with FTX. You've got an exchange that has a token, and that token actually plays a very key role within their particular product. So in EOS's case with this, as you saw in the announcement, there's going to be a launch pad. EOS holders will benefit directly from holding EOS on that exchange, because then they'll be able to get airdrops. Whenever you've got EOS and you want to determine which tokens should be listed next on that exchange, holding EOS will be crucial to that. So the bunch of functions like that where, and details will come out more over time as this is fleshed out more, but having that key relationship is so important, because then you start getting trading volume, you have one CX, and if it's a reputable CX, and obviously in this case, because of the appointments that you mentioned earlier, key positioning within that very important market, being able to have licenses as the licenses roll out and regulatory framework rolls out in 2024, being able to position yourself there. And then that just opens up another door, right? So we talk about DWF partnership before. That provides key liquidity provision, market making services, investments into projects, support on that front. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. And then you get the exchanges. And so you get one key exchange that's going to be able to help support EOS like no other. Like we are the number one there. That starts opening doors for other exchanges afterwards, because all it takes is one, then you get another, you start getting the trading volume, then you can start going to the tier one exchanges type of thing. And so it's just part of a bigger, part of the bigger puzzle. And that's the work that we've been doing over the last 2 years or so, is putting all those different pieces in place. So each individual one might not look like a big thing, but when you actually zoom out and you start looking at all these different things, we talk about Spirit, talk about Hong Kong, talk about Japan, talk about this, talk about PassPay, all these different things are all interconnected. And they're all key pieces of the puzzle. So yeah, very excited about that. I think it's really, really cool. And for EOS, this is a massive opportunity. EOS doesn't have the luxury of being able to compete against other chains on the financial front. What I mean by that is EOS doesn't hold a massive treasury like other chains do, because they launched with the foundation, or they allocated a significant percentage of the token supply towards that. EOS doesn't have that. EOS has to compete against people that have way more money, and what they need to do in order to be able to compete, and I've been saying this for years, is to make strategic bets, strategic investments, and strategic partnerships, because it can't compete with others at the same level or in the same way. It has to compete differently, has to do things differently. And this is a prime example of something that any other chain, if they really wanted to, if the sole requirement was money, EOS would have lost. It's more than just that. So obviously we need to have certain things in place. The chain itself is ultra secure. It's been running for 2,000 days. We've got high performance, low cost, predictable cost. That makes certain use cases possible. So you've got kind of all the background of what's required, but then on top of that, you need that little extra cherry, these little extra things. And this is where EOS really shines, and where the market is starting to take notice more and more. And this is just one of the announcements.
So we've been talking about this announcement, but I skipped. You mentioned the launch pad. So I'm going to run through all of the different bullet points of what this partnership actually entails, because I think we can probably give a little bit more information than the simple bullet points that were in the press release and blog post. So you did mention the launch pad, and basically EOS is the only cryptocurrency. So the only other ones that'll play a role in this are their stable coins, so USDT and the Turkish lira. So basically stake EOS to participate in airdrop opportunities. And you mentioned like token listing voting, for example. The other one was synergistic market growth. So basically cross-marketing between CoinTR and EOS. So the event last week was a prime example of that. Last week just so happened to be CoinTR's 2-year anniversary. They had a massive event. So Yves spoke to all of these government, banking, and crypto industry leaders. Over 300 people in attendance, formal dinner, major event that they already had planned. But because of this partnership, we got pulled into it. Yves, you have one of the very few speaking slots. And then prior to that event, because everyone was in town for this bigger event, we were able to do a very successful EOS meetup leading into that event. And that's where all of the different EOS projects or future EOS projects got to pitch to the Turkish community, and influencers, their KOLs were all invited there. So that's just one example of the synergistic market growth, being able to grow together and benefit each other. The other one is an incubator launch. So basically working with CoinTR for deal flow and incubation for projects. Some of the projects that presented that EOS Labs has been already working with, just so they are Turkish projects, and I had no idea until I was there and meeting the team. So basically allowing these projects to give a priority to some of the Turkish groups, but not only the Turkish groups, because EOS Labs is obviously working global. But another example of how the incubator could benefit projects is preferential token listings, for example, and that plays into the wider ecosystem support. So EOS itself is listed on almost every major exchange that exists. But EOS altcoins have traditionally always had a very difficult time at getting their token listings. Either the token listings are too expensive, or the exchanges won't answer their phone calls, or they just don't know how to navigate those waters to get those opportunities. So this is going to help close that gap. So part of all of the projects who were in town, they met with people from CoinTR, for example, explained their projects, what they plan to do with a token, if they already had a token or were planning to launch a token. So basically making those introductions to make that easier for them. And that's something that EOS has really never had. There's very few tokens traditionally that have had any kind of listings or liquidity. And that's the other component, is if you want to get listed by Binance or the big dogs, you need to showcase that you have liquidity and you can produce trading volume. And CoinTR will present that opportunity for these up and coming projects that are going to be launching on EOS and EOS EVM. They'll be able to showcase that they have a community. They'll be able to market to the CoinTR user base. Exchanges are the entry point into every single altcoin that exists. That's how people get in there. They might get in there for Bitcoin, but then they see what else is available. And then I think I hit on all of them except for the staking pool, but that's a fairly easy one to explain, is lock up EOS, generate yield. So basically it's one way for them to attract EOS holders, either existing or people who are holding other cryptocurrencies or stable coins who would be willing to swap into EOS for the staking pool advantages. And that could have different ranges of lockups, for example. But the details, I think, are still being finalized on that. So overall, very successful event. Is there anything we missed before I move on? I think you already hit on the next topic for the most part.
No, I guess the only thing we talked about earlier is that those listings are so important. That incubator and that launch pad, essentially, by having people be able to list in tokens and then airdrop to EOS holders, just means that EOS holders start to make money just simply because they're EOS holders. So when we go back to 5-6 years ago, this idea that if you held EOS, it would have benefits. This is one of the key partnerships, key components of this partnership, because once people start making money again, because they're EOS holders, it starts generating that hype again. It starts getting more people in the ecosystem, and it just feeds off of each other, right? We've been lacking that for a very long period of time. With this partnership, this is one of the key pillars of this partnership. So I'm really excited to be able to see, and it's already in the works, like this idea of being able to list some tokens that are either on EOS or through the EVM, which is basically still EOS. That is going to be one of the major things that is possible with CoinTR.
My next topic I put on the list is just EOS Labs generally. I think we've full credit to EOS Labs on almost everything we've talked about here, as far as making the introductions, getting the partnerships, and lining up the deal flow to make EOS EVM and EOS very successful. Is there any other discussion around labs that we wanted to mention before jumping into the next major topic?
No, I mean, unless you've got something specific, not really, but I'm sure something else will come up as we get to other topics.
How about some clarity here? So I have seen some questions of because of like ENV, for example, and then EOS Labs. So do you want to explain the R&D component and the vetting of the DEX and how that gets passed up, and how those two entities synergize? And you could even kind of throw the ENF in there, and how all three organizations synergize.
Yeah, sure. So like I mentioned earlier, I mean, when ENF started, it was just ENF, right? So ENF had to do every function or every component possible that you would want a network to have. So whether it be the comms, the marketing, the token support, the market making, the outreach, the development, the business development, the actual code development, basically everything had to be under the same umbrella because that was the only entity that was there. As we started creating those initiatives, and we had the grant framework, we had Pomelo, we had Eden for a while, like such. So you had all these different kind of on ramps, and then we saw that, hey, there's one part that we still need to address. It's that venture side of things. Venture came about, EOS Network Ventures. All right, now we've got a fund, but now you've got challenges with that fund of being able to administer the fund itself. Traditionally, when you administer a fund, you get about a 2%. If it's a vanilla type of setup, you get a 2% that's allocated to administrative costs. But when we look at a $20 million fund, which is what Fund 1 is, that's about $400,000 per year. $400,000 really doesn't get you much in terms of being able to staff up that entity. So now, obviously, you can go outside of those parameters, and that was the original intent. But then the more you go outside of those parameters, the more money you're taking away from actual investments. So anyways, long story short, we look at, all right, well, how can we kind of fill that gap or address that issue while also seeing the issues that we were saying with the ENF in terms of business development, like growing that side of things, etc. Labs comes about. This is the in-between, right? So Labs takes care of kind of the business development for the network, more of that application layer, the outreach layer, while also filling kind of a research and analytics arm. So what happens is now you've got the ENV that has the funds to be able to deploy in terms of traditional investment, right? It's just vanilla venture fund, basically. You've got the ENF that is responsible. It's a non-for-profit, responsible mainly for marketing, for the development, for kind of the voice and the face of the network. And now Labs fills that in between, whereby they can do the research and the analytics for the greater ecosystem of which functions do we need, what's missing, and how does it all play with one another. And then that also then fulfills the function for the ENV, whereby now the ENV doesn't have to actually have staff on hand to be able to review decks, because this is what Labs can do. And so it bridges that gap between the foundation non-for-profit side of things and then the full for-profit VC ventures side of things. And so it's just more efficient resource allocation, very specific role and function. So they get really good at that instead of doing a little bit of everything. This is their bread and butter. And so ultimately it just makes these three pillars that are very distinct in their responsibilities, but have crazy overlap in why each is needed and how the synergies play with one another. And so obviously Labs is very fresh. It's only been running now for 2.5 months, but even that short period of time, we've seen concrete things where they can do a tangible improvements, or they can explore opportunities that otherwise would have been very difficult to do under the previous architecture, the general architecture of these different components within these ecosystem.
So we talked about some investment, some incubation, some market making. Let's jump into the next topic, DWF Labs. So the big announcement for the investment and the partnership was several months ago. And sometimes people in the community, because I guess a lot of what goes on is like keeping in the loop, having weekly calls, working with DWF. There's not always an announcement for just ongoing relationships with these different entities. So you want to kind of just give a TLDR on what the relationship is like in the week to week or day to day or month to month with DWF Labs and the role that they play in the ecosystem?
Yeah, sure. So DWF Labs, it's bread and butter. Like the main function that they fulfill is market making services. And so as a prop shop, which is very, very different. So anyways, let me back up. Historically, in the ecosystem, in blockchain in general, most market makers were entities that would essentially get a loan from the chains, and their aim would be about 5% of token supply. So in EOS's case, that would have been about 50 million tokens. And then they provide market making services leveraging those tokens, and then they get call options to buy those tokens in the future, etc. Like it was is a very standard agreement. We're talking about GSR, Wintermute, and others. They were all running the same formula. DWF comes in and they're taking a completely different formula, one that is, in the market maker world outside of blockchain, is the DWF formula is a known formula. They're a prop shop. Basically, instead of taking loans, they own the tokens. They buy the tokens. They have their own tokens. And instead of being more on the maker side, they're more on the taker side. It allows them to have a little bit more risk because it's their own token, so they can play the game differently than others. Obviously, that ruffles feathers. They're new in the space, and they were the first ones to go about this, and so they got a lot of traction. We were I won't go over kind of the story of how we met, etc. But in the end, we were looking at which market maker that we would work with, and we ended up choosing DWF. Now, as a function, as a strategic partnership, market making services was only one of them. The other side of DWF, obviously, is that they have an investment arm. They've got a portfolio of companies. And so what we've seen over the last year with DWF is a cross-pollination of their portfolio companies that have gotten investment from DWF, that have been deploying on EOS, whether it be wallets or bridges, a few of them that you've seen over the last couple of months. That directly comes because we are both portfolio companies. We're both under the same umbrella, so to speak. So we get in touch, and then there are synergies. Not talking about any cost exchange, any basic, it's just, hey, we're part of the same family. Let's help each other out type of thing. So we've seen that already come about. Now, the other things that you've may not seen, and like DWF, we have weekly calls with them. We meet them at events. They've been hosting events. They've been inviting us to events. I'll actually be heading in the year to one of their events that they're sponsoring. And the other thing that we're doing is then the investment side of things. So a little bit of alpha here. I won't necessarily say who or what, but there's a prominent EOS project that is going to be receiving investment from DWF and then support. And so you mentioned earlier did you mention earlier? I'm not too sure. They're running a current incubation program. Well, one of the things is with our relationship with DWF, we can just skip the line. And so there's a particular project that's going to be, that doesn't even know. So if they're listening in, they'll now know, but they're going to be receiving investment from DWF and support from DWF. So that's the kind of thing that, again, is super key that we never had in the past. We never had a relationship with a market maker that plays that critical function in an overall ecosystem. We have that. And DWF has been a really good partner for us from the very beginning to be able to create those opportunities, open some doors, create some synergies, cross collaboration, cross pollination, plays a key role with ENV as well. So we're looking at, we make investments, they also support the investment, or they make investment, we come in and support the investment. We mentioned earlier, Turkey. One of the applications that was there, BitBrawl, directly comes from DWF. That's one of their portfolio companies. And so it's that kind of thing that DWF has been able to help with in the background from when we basically announced that strategic partnership with them almost a year ago now.
Yeah, I think you hit every topic. So I did not mention the incubator, but I will now. I'll drop the link to the DWF incubator tweet, I guess in the live chat, I think. And then they also just recently launched an angel fund. So Andre, the CEO of DWF Labs, he dropped a message the other day about launching the angel fund. So EOS projects highly encourage everyone to apply. So apply to the opportunities being presented by DWF Labs. Apply to EOS Labs. Like, there's opportunities here that weren't here, but you have to put a deck together. You have to have a business plan. You can't just say, hey, give me money. I promise I will do a lot of good. It has to be, it's a real thing. It's a real business interaction, and these opportunities do exist. So
correct,
wow, we're only 3 minutes over my time queue. We have one more topic I wanted to hit on here. I have a lot of stuff we'll save for the end during the AMA, but Japan. So with all of the recent news that came kind of back to back to back, I guess it was the week before last. So PassPay partnership, the only licensed and regulated Japanese yen stablecoin issuer. And so I guess first off, how did this partnership come about? And then we can get into a little bit about the implications on it.
Labs again, same thing. Labs opened that door. This is one of the, as you mentioned, this is one of the two entities that has that license. The other one being MUFJ. You can look in MUFJ. It's like the Mitsubishi Financial Group. I forget. Anyways, it's an acronym. It's a bank in Japan. That's more going to be an internal thing, so it's not really for the public. And so, really, this is the only entity that has licenses to be able to issue a Japanese stablecoin. And the licensing process is incredibly long and it's public. So we also know that nobody else is trying to get that license. And to obtain that license, it takes an incredibly long time. So they'll basically have market share and first mover advantages for quite some time. This partnership came about because of Labs. And obviously, I've been spending time in Japan. I previously have experience in Japan, lived there for 6 years. We got our regulatory approval from Japan early this summer. And then we got, so that first listing, then we got the second listing with Binance Japan on, when was it? November 27th, I think is when it came out. So just last week. And so, one of the key markets that we're trying to position ourselves in is Japan. Now, I know people have been addressing like, yeah, but there's no volume in Japan. Yeah, because that's not the role that Japan plays in the greater ecosystem. So if you're comparing it to something like Korea, South Korea traditionally has a lot of traders. That is kind of the role that it plays within the larger ecosystem. Japan, that's not the role that it plays. Japan, if you look at even Bitcoin, there's very little movement because people buy and hold. People in Japan actually use cryptocurrencies for their utility. So when you go in a convenience store in Japan, you can actually pay with cryptocurrencies. So you're not necessarily buying to trade. You're not fulfilling that role. That's not why you're in that ecosystem. It's a very traditionally very top-down, more of kind of a system, but people use it for their utility. And so this Japanese yen stablecoin partnership is really interesting for us. And let's touch upon how they're even going to do it, because this is going to come on the EOS EVM. And I kind of want to let you talk about this part because we still haven't figured out what we're going to coin this, or like the general idea. Just get into that, because this to me is incredibly exciting of what we're able to do on EOS because it's EOS.
All right, so I might say too much, but sorry in advance. So if you wanted to build a payments network specifically for a stablecoin, and all that network did is transferred stablecoins, you don't necessarily need DeFi, like the same crypto style DeFi. You need a network that, one, first and foremost, is reliable and won't go down, because I mean that would kill every project on the network. You need it to be cheap. You need it to be fast. And EOS obviously checks off all of those boxes. So if you wanted to do it on an EVM, how would you do it? So let's say you wanted to deploy a stablecoin payments network onto the EOS EVM or on Polygon or on Binance Smart Chain. So all of the users, think of it like Venmo or PayPal, and the only use case is money transfers and stablecoin transfers. If you wanted to build such a system, your end users would hit a little bit of a roadblock whenever they go to send a stablecoin from Zack to Yves, and then it asks me for a gas token, and it's like, whoa, I don't have any Polygon, I don't have any EOS, I don't have any Ethereum. Well, imagine if you could potentially launch your own EVM nested inside of the EOS blockchain and could customize your gas token to be the main token being used for your payment rails. And this is potentially something that we might be able to see in the future. So this could be potentially the first use case of that, of multiple EVMs being deployed onto the same blockchain. So think of it, an enterprise use case where if you're thinking about traditional blockchain tech, you would have to launch your own blockchain to do, or your own rollup, or run your own infrastructure to make this happen. But EOS already does all that. You don't have to worry about your state history, your data availability. It all lives in EOS RAM. You just need to run an RPC node. All of the consensus is already taken care of. It basically makes a private blockchain easy to do without having to run your own blockchain, set up your own validator network. That's a use case that we might be seeing here.
Because it's just a smart contract, and EOS is just that good, basically. That's the
and underneath the EOS EVM, or maybe some future EVM on EOS. No matter what. So on the EOS EVM, you have EOS as the gas token. So every time I make a transaction, I'm paying EOS gas. Nice 80 or 90% of that's being set aside for a burn. All of the state history of the EOS EVM or any fork of the EOS EVM, all of the state history lives inside RAM. So that's a huge difference from other scalable like L2 tech, for example, on Ethereum. If you're using like an optimistic rollup, the only thing that's going on chain is the Merkle root. If you want to pull the state history of the entire chain, it actually lives off chain. So you have to roll back the entire chain history to find that. Whereas if you instead want to scale by launching your own EVM or using just EOS EVM, for example, all of that availability lives on the EOS blockchain. So it makes it really easy for a project. Think of it like the next generation of blockchain as a service. You could spin up your own blockchain on top of the EOS blockchain, and you only have one interface, one EVM, whether it's EOS EVM or a PayCash EVM or PayPass EVM. You have one blockchain, and you have one blockchain that everyone's interacting with, whether they're end users or smart contracts. Everyone's on top. But then underneath that layer, we have the EOS blockchain, the EOS native layer, which is highly scalable. And earlier this year launched Antelope IBC. If capacity dictated it, the base layer itself can scale horizontally. So as far as everyone is concerned on the EOS EVM or any derivative of it, there's only one EVM. But then underneath it, there could actually be multiple blockchains at some point if demand required it.
Well, see, this is where the chain in the background. So this is where I guess you and I are not there yet in terms of how you narrate this. It's not an extra chain. It really is just a smart contract on the same chain. So it's not an extra chain. And why that's relevant. So let's talk about that as a concrete example. We talked to Binance about USDT listing, being able to have the USDT EVM version. And we're doing back and forth with Binance for a while about that. And it was very difficult for them to comprehend that this is not an extra chain, because in other networks, their EVM is an extra chain. You've got different validators. It's a different thing. Where in our case, it's like, no, it's the same validators. There's no difference. It's a smart contract running on that chain. It's just like your like a regular application, whether it's a game running on native or an application running on native. It's just a smart contract. This is the same thing. EVM is just a smart contract. And so being able to leverage that function, because EOS is just that good, where you can just run a bunch of applications. They just happen to be that instead of running the EOSIO.token, won't call it a standard, but let's say standard for those who know what I'm talking about. You just have the EOSIO.EVM contract that's running there. And it's just a different way to be able to access native or to be able to access the protocol directly. All the resources being used are EOS. They're basically converted to EOS. RAM is EOS. Everything is EOS. You're just accessing it in a different way. And then you're just basically putting transactions on chain. And like you mentioned, what's different is it's not a hash. Everything is present, which is completely different than other chains. And then going back to those functions and those features that are so key to EOS, it's the fact that it's scalable, that the cost is low, but very importantly, the cost is predictable. So you can have other competitor chains where they have a low cost, but in times of congestion, that cost goes up. In EOS's case, that cost is extremely predictable, which for a business is very important. Your cost can be slightly higher. If it's predictable, it's probably better than a lower cost that's non-predictable, because you can't manage a business and you can't manage a budget if you don't know what your costs are going to be, because it'll be dependent on the usage of your product. In EOS's case, not only is it predictable, it's low, it's scalable, it's secure. It's been running now for 2,000 days. It's just that good.
So you brought up this concept of the confusion. So you did give it a real example of Binance. They were very confused about the EOS EVM because it seemed to them like, is this a side chain? No, it is not. So the difference is typically when you run a new blockchain or a separate blockchain, the exchange has to run another validator for another chain. I guess not a validator, but a node. So it doesn't have to be a block producer, but it's running the same software as a block producer. Every exchange runs infrastructure. So that's why every time they need to list a new chain, for example, or a project from a new chain, it's a heavy lift, especially if it's not like an Ethereum chain without the EOS infrastructure. Anyway, so it becomes like a UX issue to make it really easy. So I'll go back to CoinTR and what they were able to do. So right now you're using the EOS native layer. Whenever you transfer tokens to the EOS EVM, you're basically just sending them to a native EOS account with a public key in the memo. So whenever you're a native Ethereum user and you're used to Ethereum, you're not used to account names and memos. So that kind of confuses people. But with these exchange integrations, and Gate.io is the first one to do it. I think OKX is doing it, and CoinTR is about to do it. You just need to change the UI, basically. Just hide the account name from your end user. Just hide that. Underneath, in the background, it's sending it to eosio.evmn. The end user doesn't need to know about that. All they need to see is a single text field that says, paste your public key here. That's all you need to do. In the background, the exchange is not running separate node infrastructure. They're just running EOS native nodes, as they always have. Every single exchange that exists is running an EOS node already. So that's why these EVM integrations are so exciting, starting obviously with EOS EVM, is all of the exchange integrations already exist. They don't need to run extra infrastructure. And now we have this EVM support, and anyone else who would like to deploy a new EVM, if there's a use case for it, I think most projects would deploy on EOS EVM as projects, but whenever you have like these enterprise use cases, they could still benefit from the EOS infrastructure and the rails that currently exist. And I think we're much over on our segment.
Yeah, we keep being told in the background we need to wrap this up because there were other segments to this show. So with that, let's move forward to the other segment of this show.
Hey, I'm back. What's up, guys? That was great, man. That was a great conversation. You guys went over by like 15 minutes. Not even that bad.
Only 15? That's not so bad.
I think that's under. If we were to set a line before, I think that's under the line.
We didn't get a lot of questions in advance for the AMA, though. And we did set aside a lot of time at the end. So I think we might still maybe be on track. But I don't know. I haven't been able to keep up with the live chat. So
it's all good. It's all good. We'll run the show to the end and we'll find out how long it was at that time. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you guys touch on a lot of great topics. Real world assets via Spirit blockchain. That was super exciting. The CoinTR news, obviously very impressive that an exchange chooses EOS as its one coin to kind of integrate in the platform. And it actually got me thinking, I'm surprised I've not heard of other exchanges doing that. Because from a regulatory standpoint, I imagine it's much easier to not run your own token as an exchange, but you still want to kind of incentivize the type of behavior so you can make a partnership with, like, for example, EOS. So I think that's really cool. Yeah, took a couple notes, but yeah, that was great, guys. All right, so now let's keep the show moving. Definitely keep dropping your questions in the chat. I see someone telling me that they want to see more of me or something. Love it. More comments like that. Definitely. We can talk more at the end of the show in the Q&A of kind of what's going on here. But yeah, so I guess at this point, we'll say bye to Yves and Zack for now. And I'll throw it over to Nathan for some EOS development news.
Hello, hello. Good morning, afternoon, or night, wherever you are. If you're a dev, doesn't really matter anyway. I'm Nathan James. Let's skip the foreplay. We'll get right into the tech changes and improvements that have come out recently or are on their way. So starting with Leap. Leap 5.0 RC2 was released on around October 11th and is being rigorously tested by the community. It includes significant improvements like the new crypto primitives, BLS signatures, which once enabled will open up new possibilities. EOS Virtual Machine Optimized Compiler, better known as EOS VM OC, on by default now for system contracts, which will improve performance for system actions and EOS token transfers. In layman's terms, this means we'll get more throughput for all of the stuff that we usually do quite often. There are various other optimizations and improvements that allow for larger transactions, better memory management and multi-threading, as well as a new mode for managing state databases, which it looks like some people are already putting into good use. The throughput for read-only transactions has also increased due to better multi-threading. This means for API providers, The read-only transactions are now more efficient, which saves costs and also allows more read-only transactions to be processed in the same time, which is excellent for developers since these are free transactions that allow you to do some processing of on-chain data that can be returned through the new action results. So you can return these from the actual chain to your front-end application or backends, as long as you don't save anything onto the chain during the transaction. So you can't do anything like saving state or modifying state. This is similar to view functions on EVM chains, which is widely used in the larger Web3 ecosystem, and has been sorely lacking in Antelope for quite a long time. So very good to see this stuff. Deferred transactions have also been removed from Leap 5, which frees up additional processing power for normal transactions. On the EOS mainnet, this is already turned off. The node operators have changed their configurations to stop processing the deferred transactions, but this software change does the same in a better and more efficient way. RC3, which is the successor, of course, to RC2, RC meaning release candidate, is already being worked on, and after identifying some needed changes for stability, hardening, and other various improvements, is very, very close to release. Some APIs, in fact, are already running this on the EOS mainnet already. On to the EVM. So on the EVM side, we have multiple improvements that came out recently as well. The ability to bridge over non-EOS tokens was open to the public, and we are slowly opening the gates. There are already 4 tokens that have been added and more that are scheduled. You can already move these across the VMs using the bridge at bridge.evm.eosnetwork.com. And if you have a token that you would like to be able to bridge and haven't already talked to us, please reach out to us so that we can add you to a future round of additions. Though we're hoping that this manual process doesn't last long, as we're working on a way to automate the process, but it needs some development work to make sure that it's done in a safe and secure way. Another wonderful thing that's coming out, very close to my heart actually, is WebSocket support for EVM, which is almost here and has been one thing that has been asked a lot about from EOS EVM developers quite often. This opens up the ability to listen to events that can be emitted from smart contracts and moves EOS EVM from requiring polling to being able to subscribe to changes in smart contracts. This is very much an expectation of Solidity developers, and I've been wanting to use it myself. It's just not there. Now it'll be there. You don't have to do anything yourself. Once it's enabled on nodes, it'll just work as is. The EVM team is also doing work that is required for something called hard fork support, such as the London hard fork, which adds the ability to order transaction fees or transactions by fees. And eventually this continuous hard fork support will enable account abstraction and everything that comes in between those hard forks. We've also pulled upstream changes from Block Scout, which is the Explorer we use for EOS EVM, and it has a lot of UI changes that make the Explorer much more modern, nicer to look at, and as you can see from the screenshot on the screen, it is way better than what we have right now, looking beautiful. In the community side, Now Nodes, which is a part of this larger Now Everything Now, they have released a guide for using RPCs to develop applications on EOS using their API nodes and Hyperion history nodes. This is kind of a pay-as-you-go service, SaaS model, with a free tier of up to 100,000 requests per month and scaling up to unlimited at 400 euros a month. Excellent service. Really happy to see something which is a pay-as-you-go model. It's definitely something that's been needed. The Crypto Lions team that manages the Jungle Testnet has updated their front end, and it looks fantastic. This gives EOS and Antelope developers a much better testing experience, which helps keep new developers in the ecosystem. And for developers like me that are old farts in the ecosystem, well, it's just nice to see something new. Pomelo has released bounties into beta. Bounties is a way to sponsor work on a GitHub repo. You can create a ticket on GitHub and then assign a price to completing it on Pomelo so that you can decentralize the work done on projects. This is a seriously cool way to get work done on open source projects, and I'm definitely going to use it myself in the future. If you would like to test this out, I'm not actually sure if I should be saying this on stream, but hey guys, you gave me the link. It's bounties.pomelo.io. Go test it out, see if you can break it. Open betas for all. Let's see. And finally, actually this one, I just got it right before the stream. I'm going to read it off here. We have Pinax supporting Firehose and substreams for EOS and Wax. You now have the ability to get fast and reliable access to blockchain data in seconds. You can use the Firehose and substreams for EOS and Wax. Just said that. Sorry, reading this off of a message. There is going to be a blog post that goes into more details about this next week. I don't have a link for it yet, but it's this is the succession, from what I understand, to defuse and all of that, and it's going to be very, very cool. I'm very excited about it. That's it for the tech updates. Trying to keep this a little bit quick because we went a little bit long in the last segment. We got a lot of stuff to get to. In a bit, you'll also get a developer challenge from me, which you can win some EOS, so stay tuned. But for now, let's move over to an actual fireside for once with Brandon and the amazing Greymass.
All right, hello. We are here with the legendary Aaron Cox. Aaron, you've been called the man of many hats. You've been called the most reasonable man. What's your story? Who are you? Can you give us a little background of your history in the EOS community?
Yeah, sure. I've been around in the blockchain space since before EOS. I came in the Steam days, saw potential, started building. EOS came along and was announced and started getting involved before the chain launched. Took on work for wallets at that point in time and kind of got into that because I wanted to build applications in the space and just couldn't because there wasn't a good enough system architecture around kind of the stuff I wanted to build. So it's been many, many years now that I've been stuck in this space building client-side technologies, and hopefully we'll be getting back to applications at some point. But throughout that, been a block producer, been a vocal voice in the community. Apparently I'm still reasonable. And so I've been working with the coalition over the past year or so now on Wharf to bring some modern client-side SDKs for everyone in the Antelope community to build their applications, and hopefully whatever I want to build in the future too.
Well, thank you. Thank you on behalf of the entire Antelope ecosystem, if I'm allowed to say such a thing, for building client-side SDKs and making Wharf. In 60 seconds, give us an overview of what Wharf is and why people should care.
Wharf is, like we said, it's an SDK. It's a software development kit. It's a thing that developers would use when they have an idea of some cool application they want to build that gives them kind of all the shapes and like building blocks that they need to build their application. It makes it so that, they don't have to go out and invent certain pieces of this blockchain technology before they can get to whatever it is that their idea is. It's also a place that helps connect other people's ideas. In this case, a good example would be like wallets. Developers who are building an app aren't also going to be building a wallet most of the time. So they need those like connective pieces that are going to pull them together and allow them to connect the wallet with their application and then connect their application to the blockchain and then use different APIs and pull all of these different pieces together to like realize what their vision is. So Wharf is a collection of all of that. It takes a lot of the SDKs that we've had in the past, reimagines them and modernizes them so that it's easier to build applications in this ecosystem.
That was good. I wasn't timing you, but I think you made it pretty close to 60 seconds there. Okay, so why EOS? What do you like about building Web3 applications on EOS?
There's a bunch of human-friendly parts to it that really make it closer to a Web 2.0 experience that you can leverage. Things like human-readable account names, whereas so many other blockchains in the space are still, you use these long strings of gibberish that like you gotta check the first little bit and you gotta check the last little bit and make sure it's right. And if you paste it wrong and miss something, you might screw something up. There's a lot more like that technically if you dig into the blockchain. And then there's also some like really powerful developer features that don't exist in other blockchains as well that make it so that once you learn those systems, or if somebody abstracts those systems for you in a nice SDK, you can take advantage of these really powerful features that let your applications do things that otherwise you wouldn't be able to. So it was the right bundle of cool technologies, I think, that drew me in.
So how does Wharf specifically make it easier for humans or developers that are humans to go from 0 to 1?
I guess maybe a good example is resources. A lot of the early adopters of these platforms had to learn what those things were and learn how to manage them. One of the things that Wharf can help make that easier with is its plugin architecture, so that we can like take that complexity away and turn it into something like a fee. That's really good for the user, because now, you know, if you're gonna go log in and play a game, you don't really need to know what that system is. It can, if need be, jump out and say, hey, there's a shortage of something going on here. Here's how you correct it. And you can click a button to correct it, rather than going off and like learning what these are and then learning how to manage them. And it provides a lot of those tools to make that process easier. And the way it helps us get from 0 to 1 is that before this, like, all the developers had to either just ignore that this was a user experience problem, or they had to sit there and figure out a way to solve that. We did that originally with our wallet, with Anchor. We went to that like 0.5 step, you know, before we could get to 1. So we have taken what we've learned over the years trying to get to 1, and then just bundled that up as like a little package to help everybody else, you know, get there.
Okay, so take us through each of these different tools that you've built in WharfKit. Can you rattle them all off really fast?
Session, account, and contract are the 3 big ones. The Antelope library. Then beyond that, we have like ABI Cache, Common, some mock data things. There are 7 wallet plugins. There are some abstract wallet plugins. There's some transact plugins that do things like the resource stuff I was talking about. I think there's 4 different resource provider plugins that have different like approaches to how you solve these problems. There's some login plugins. There's templates for all of these things that are all their own repositories. There's also the API layer stuff. There's probably 6 or 7 different kits for things like Hyperion, for our history solution Robo, for Atomic Assets, for like a lot of the really popular things. So I'm sure there will be more. And hopefully more by the community. We really tried to make this so that it was this like collection of building blocks that if you build something really cool, like how about you make a building block that is now part of this like big family of tools and then share it with everybody else. So yeah, I mean, the feedback has been great and the reception has been great. Nobody has come to me and said, this isn't good, I'm gonna go back to the old way of doing it.
Okay, so you've spent years building the tools to build the house. What house do you want to live in? What can people now build now that Wharf exists that you would wish they would?
I'd like to see more content systems being built, whether that's your private content or whether that's validating content or whether that's like solving some of the problems we have in the world with integrity and verifiability of where content comes from and where content goes. I do think gaming is primed, maybe not whole games on the blockchain, but like subsystems of some games on the blockchain, you know, to use for specific purposes to either make it more trustworthy or to decentralize it or something. There's just so much room for us to build a shared space for things like this, for people to interact together in these systems that were traditionally centralized and could now be decentralized, governed by their own community, controlled by their own community, and just kind of do what we've all experienced in the past, but in a different way, in a better way.
With Wharf now pretty much over the finish line, what's next for you in EOS? I mean, besides application development, is there anything else that you're kind of hankering to dip your toes into?
There's things that are still unsolved. Things like account creation. That's been kind of a hot topic recently. So there might be some exploration. There's still some room in Wharf to grow. At this point in with our company, like, we need to build something that's going to be able to help sustain us. So we can't just keep relying 100% on like we're going to be building public goods forever. I think next year in 2024, what we'll probably be looking at is really dividing our focus between let's build a product and then probably also doing a little bit of the part-time on the public goods. Start identifying like what pieces come next. Like, there are things that need to be addressed, but the priority still needs to be determined.
Awesome. Super pumped you're still here and building an EOS. You need all the things so that you can bring your very reasonable mind to. So appreciate that. Where can people go to learn more about Wharf and Greymass and everything that you do?
Well, Greymass is greymass.com, and it's Greymass with an E, so GRUYMASS.com. You can find links to all of our projects there, including WharfKit, but you can also go to wharfkit.com, and that is where we're building kind of as the central hub for you to get involved with Wharf. And you can also find all of this on GitHub. You can look up Greymass, it's an organization, and then WharfKit is also another organization on GitHub. From both of those places, you can find many other links to other resources like Telegram and Twitter, and I think that's pretty much the two main social platforms we use.
Awesome. Aaron, thanks so much for being here today on this Fireside Chat. We gaze across the beautiful, calm ocean waters here from the wharf. Thanks for building this wharf that we're sitting on. I'm going to hoist the anchor and head out to sea. You with me?
Sounds like an awesome plan.
All right.
What is up? Nathan James here with some developer challenges for you. I've got 2 videos that you can follow right now to deploy an application on either the EVM or EOS native. Each one of these challenges, the first one to get it done will win 200 EOS. Now the challenges are 1, putting a Tamagotchi on EOS native, or 2, building a to-don't app for EOS EVM. Now, if you want to win these, you have to send me a message with the transaction hash of you putting this onto the blockchain first. To watch the videos, head over to learn.eosnetwork.com. Good luck.
All right. Great stuff from Nathan James. Love the energy. Welcome back, Yves and Zack. Welcome, Nathan. How was that, Nathan, for your first developer segment?
Woohoo!
Woohoo, indeed. I got too excited for your developer segment. I threw over to you and completely skipped the industry news segment that we had planned. So we're going to throw it back, talk a bit about the industry news, and then we'll get to your Q&A. So if you have questions, we've seen a bunch of them in the chat. Leave them in the chat, and we'll address them in just a bit. Yeah, so industry news brief. I mean, it's been a long time since we've all gotten together. I don't know what it's been, 4 or 5, 6 weeks or something. A lot has happened. Binance, of course, CZ, probably the biggest news, I'd say, of the last 2 months. CZ stepping down as CEO. This whole Binance situation with the US government regulators kind of resolving in a peaceful manner. Well, depends if you're the one paying $4.3 billion or not. Maybe you find it's not so peaceful. But I personally had some fears about Binance. And, you know, there were some investigations going on. Do they really have everyone's crypto or don't they? I got scared. I took everything off. I told my friends to do the same. And now I feel much more reassured, I guess, now that this kind of chapter is coming to a close in an orderly fashion. Much more orderly than FTX. Anyways, any thoughts on this big news from you guys?
I think everyone paying attention knew that there was some kind of action that was hanging over the entire industry's head related to Binance, and it was a potential black swan. Something that could have potentially crippled the industry. So you imagine like a worst case scenario where somehow there's just a forceful takedown, whether it's through like rerouting DNS or shutting down the exchange, arresting people, knocking on their doors. None of that happened. It was a very peaceful settlement. So CZ agreed to his personal ramifications, which are still kind of pending. And Binance agreed to a really big fine. So from my standpoint, it removes a giant risk factor that was hanging over the industry's head. And now that black swan risk factor has kind of been dealt with and has been, it's not quite in the rear view because there's still the issue with CZ leaving the country and facing his sentencing in a couple of months. But it seems for right now that everything's good. I think CZ, as part of the settlement, one of the things that he was allowed to keep was his majority stake in Binance, the company. So that gives him every single incentive to comply, because if CZ doesn't fulfill whatever his sentencing is or his fines that he's paying. If he does not fulfill those obligations, then obviously the deal would be off the table for Binance, which he owns a majority stake in, and they allowed him to keep a majority stake in. So he's incentivized to kind of follow through on all of this. So I think it's kind of bad for Binance because it's a lot of money, but good for the industry. And I don't think it really came as much of a surprise. That's, I guess, my thought on it.
It does feel like that was one of the last big guys to get cleaned up, by the regulators before really allowing the ETF to be approved, and all these other regulators that are looking at the space. It seems like they want, they want to allow blockchain and crypto in their jurisdictions, but not if these cowboys, from the old crypto ways are running the show. So
it's the end of an era with CZ stepping down. I mean, it needed to happen. There's a new CEO. He won't have a target on his back. He's been with the company for years. So business will continue. The industry moves on. And like I said, it's one less risk factor that people need to really think about.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess leading from that story, we've got obviously a huge surge in the crypto markets recently. I'm sure everyone here is aware Bitcoin's trading at almost $44,000 right now. Pretty impressive. I mean, lots of speculation going around, of course. Why is it, surging right now? ETF speculation, of course. Sailor is still buying like a madman. And there's also rumors of, these sovereign wealth funds starting to get interested in the space and potentially stepping in a big way. Just today, I was reading some tweets from Caitlin Long. Actually, let me see if I can pull it up here. Oh, that's the Bitcoin chart. That's the wrong one. Here we go. Look at that. Caitlin Long, she's a great person to follow in the crypto space, very regulatory focused. But yeah, basically saying that the Emir of Qatar is rumored to be interested in purchasing up some Bitcoins. And I'm sure they're not the only nation or sovereign wealth fund that's looking at this type of stuff. And then the other chart I wanted to share here is, kind of showcasing all the major crashes of the last year, Terra, Celsius, FTX, and how all of those losses are kind of already erased. To me, this feels pretty bullish for the space overall. And, if you ask me when FTX crashed, how long will it take for us to get back to the pre-Terra Luna, days? I would have guessed much longer than when it took. So overall, pretty excited for crypto, pretty excited for EOS with all the great news that you guys shared and you guys have been working on. And yeah, overall, very excited time. Hey, back in the office.
Yeah, I mean, the ATF's the big news. I don't think there's much we could really say that isn't being said. If you go on Twitter, read CoinDesk, Cointelegraph, it's pretty much all of the news right now.
There we go. Yeah, so yeah, anything else? Any other big news that kind of struck out to you guys in the last couple of weeks? Maybe crypto, macro, AI, I don't know. Anything interesting? Or do we go over to the Q&A section, which is going to be our last segment of the show?
Yeah.
Yes, let's do that.
And then I think I have a few bullet points I added too if we have time. There's some things about Hong Kong. Yves, I don't think we've ever announced Cyberport, for example.
Can you guys even see me or hear me? I had to.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
All right. Okay. That's why I've been quiet. Did we announce Cyberport? I don't know. Did we announce?
We did not. So why don't I ask the question? So this didn't come. I'm a community member also, so I will ask the question: Is Yves, do you have any updates on what's been going on with Hong Kong, and do you have anything that you would like to share about Invest HK or the ENF being accepted into the Cyberport incubation program and what that program even is?
Well, sure. You just basically said it. So I guess EOS was accepted into the Cyberport incubation program. That comes alongside with funding. So basically, the Hong Kong government is actually paying the Hong Kong entity or LLC of EOS because we've got employees there, we've got some engineers there, and project managers. So we've got an entity there. Essentially, we've had this for quite some time, and we've been accepted in that incubation program. I believe we're the only L1 that's been accepted in that incubation program. That comes alongside some funding. We've got some key metrics that we need to achieve in order to be able to unlock other funding, etc. But essentially, Cyberport Invest HK quite big in Hong Kong in terms of being able to position themselves for what Hong Kong is trying to do in the Web3 space. Invest Hong Kong, more of kind of like finance arm of the government that in part takes care of Web3, and Cyberport is more that like incubation academic side of things, and so it's pretty exciting for EOS to be there. What that gives us, there's a few things that we get. So obviously I talked about the financing, actually gives access to money. It opens the door as well for actual office space and for us to be able to do meetups and to be able to host hackathons, that type of thing, sponsored and helped by the government. To give an example, for those who were in Portugal, there was I forget the name of it, but there was a hackathon from, was it Near not too long ago? I think it was a hackathon from Near, and Invest Hong Kong actually was one of the main sponsors. So they flew down to Portugal and were one of the main sponsors for the hackathon. So like they've got access to funding, they've got access to obviously they're a government agency, and so they're guiding the regulations and opening the doors, working on that regulatory framework, and we're embedded within that. Basically, we have access to all those different players, and so every time we go to Hong Kong, we're advancing those files. Concrete example of something that they've been able to open. I mentioned in a tweet not too long ago while I was there, introduction to Hang Seng Bank. I talked about Spirit Blockchain earlier. Hang Seng Bank, like everything is playing with one another, and so Hong Kong, a lot of positive development there, very good location, advancement in terms of Web3 and like what they're trying to position themselves as, very, very key as well. And we've got really deep connections there. Part of this Cyberport Invest Hong Kong partnerships are that basically. I don't know if that answers the question that you were asking.
Yeah, I mean, we can jump into the actual questions now. I just wanted to make sure we got into that because we ran over on our last segment.
Go for it. I'm seeing tons of labs, so I'm guessing that your audio is actually in sync because your video is not in sync. And I don't know if I'm just talking to myself because I see everybody's audio and video is out of sync.
Yeah, no, I was muted. Looking at these questions here, not super clear which ones we'll be taking here. So maybe Yves, you just find the question on there and then answer it if you want to.
I guess there's one that's being highlighted right now. So I don't know if you want to read that or do I just read it? I don't know if that's how it was asked. I have no idea if it's a copy paste. I'll just read what I see on screen. Given the recent discussion about governance, can you share with us what conversations there have been, if any, with Spirit Blockchain Capital and CoinTR about their approach to staking and voting? Will they vote with tokens their own or custody? If yes, how will they vote in an informed manner? Thank you for addressing this question. Those are not questions that, not conversations that have been held. So I'm not really sure. The first premise of this question is given the recent discussion about governance. I'm not sure what that's referring to, but I guess the answer ends up being the same. So there have not been discussions with Spirit Blockchain Capital or CoinTR about their approach to stake and voting. You would have to go ask them what they're going to do with their EOS stake if they have EOS stake. And then how would they vote in an informed manner? Again, you would have to ask them. I would assume it'd be the same way that the other token holders vote in their own whatever informed manner means, because that is subjective to you as a token holder. This is kind of the beauty of blockchain. You are their owner. So your keys, your crypto, you choose what is important, what is relevant for you, and you act upon that. Next question, because I'm seeing a bunch of stuff being written. I'm gonna go to the next one I see. Will you talk about Pomelo? People are very upset that you changed the rules after the season close. I guess I can address that. So one, yeah, obviously some people are not happy with the process being changed. The rules have not changed. And let me get into that distinction. When the ENF was funding and was the matching pool funder or matching pool partner for Pomelo, there was a process. There was also a process of determining who actually, because there was the governance portion afterwards of looking of whether or not there was Sybil attacks and or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There was a process. That process is actually with Labs now just even further. They're taking the definition of public good even further, where they're saying if the public good ends up never being even deployed because it's not going to be deployed because it can't, and or that entity has showcased that they're not going to be deployed, it ends up not being a public good. And so they're taking the definition of public good even further. And so their analysis is simply going in, let's say, further than what the ENF was doing. But the rules have not changed. There was always that process. The means by which they are implementing that process is slightly different. So if you've got any issues with that, obviously you can go talk to Labs and get more information there. What I can say is that yes, some people are not happy with the way things are going. There's a lot of people that are really happy with the way that things are going in their approach in determining who should actually get a funding, in the sense that who meets the bar of what is a public good and how that bar is being applied. And so if you've got anything else, please go talk to Labs. Otherwise, I actually support their approach. I think it's a very different way that we were doing it historically. I think there's merit and credit to the way that they're doing it. And I think that letting them being able to do it in a different way will yield different results, which obviously can tick some people off. But at the same time, we've seen that Labs brings about, in the way in which they do things and what they do, brings about really good things too, like the CoinTR partnership, like PayPass. Those are things that would not have been done in the same way, or they've not have been achieved in the same way if the ENF was leading those files. And so, there's some pros and cons to everything, but ultimately I think this is much better for the ecosystem. And I really do like the approach of not distributing funds to teams that have not historically I guess provided that public good and or deployed or followed through on that. Is a very different approach than what the NF did. We were going at it a different way, but pretty happy with it.
There's a question from Murat something or other. So it's really a question about instant finality. So maybe we could just give an update on instant finality. I don't know how Wax and Telos and everyone's kind of involved, but we just had a call today with Bart Wyatt, the CTO of the ENF, and kind of got an update on what's been going on with instant finality. Yves is debriefed more regularly on that than I am. But essentially what happened was the code that was handed over essentially from the UX team to be implemented. People who are very familiar with the EOS native, so people like Kevin Hefner from OCI, people like Areg, our head engineer with the ENF, they found, I don't even know what to call them because they're not bugs, but they're flaws. So basically flaws that needed to be corrected. And what I learned today talking to Bart is complete components of instant finality and the algorithms. I'm going to probably mess this up, but there were certain pieces that needed to be completely redone. And the stakes are incredibly high on this. This is the most high stakes thing that you could do for a blockchain. It is one of the riskiest things a blockchain could do is do a double spend, like have a flaw that would make it go down. So our engineers are working as fast as they can to get instant finality shipped. The timelines I saw were we should be having an RC1. They hate whenever we give dates, but our RC1 I do believe is tentatively as of today, sometime April, May. And then I guess I can give a piece of alpha. Brandon, you're on the screen, so you got the alpha with me from Bart when we had that call a couple of weeks ago on the concept of an academic paper for instant finality and hot stuff. Do you want to kind of regurgitate some of what Bart shared with us? Because this is probably the first time the EOS community is hearing about this. And it's something I'm personally really excited about, because I think we have one of the most incredible engineering teams, some of the smartest people on the planet that I've ever worked with. And this will, I believe, give an incredible amount of credibility to what's being accomplished by our engineering team. And then also, not to take any credit away from Guillaume and the UX team, they delivered a lot of very valuable foundational work for instant finality. And even though certain edge cases were uncovered, the work, most of the work was really good. So pass it to you, Brandon.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, thanks for that handoff, Zach. When EOS, the EOS white paper is a bit out of date, and it will certainly be out of date by the time Leap 6 rolls around, looking at the latter half of next year for that. And I think there's always been like a desire to have the mathematical proofs, the underpinning for what will replace DPoS, essentially, what will replace like the many things that we refer to as the consensus mechanism for EOS. So I'm trying to think of what else Bart laid down for us that day.
So basically proving all of the math in a way that kind of separates it from EOS or Antelope and generalizes it so that it is applicable to any cryptographer or blockchain researcher. Literally, the work and the math, like the cryptography, the mathematical work, the algorithms going into this, it's kind of so advanced that it's at the cutting edge of the entire blockchain industry. And I see this academic paper, like, it's almost, I believe, taking a page out of the Charles Cardano playbook of peer review. And I think doing so will give an incredible amount of credibility to the work that's being done. So yes, it's taking a while, but like, think of the only comparable thing that I can think of is ETH 2.0. And ETH 2.0 took multiple years to accomplish. There were multiple setbacks along the way. And by the time it's delivered in production, it would, I don't know what the exact time frame is, obviously a little bit over a year, but it's happening at lightning speed still. Obviously, earlier this year, we were hoping to have instant finality hot stuff implemented in Leap 5. But if that were to have occurred, then it would have shipped almost too fast, and the academic research paper would not have actually had time to happen. So that was one of the biggest positives I took from that, is basically having a piece of documentation that maybe Nathan might understand some of it, but it's going to be at a very high level for other leaders in this space. So looking forward to that. But yeah, I can't describe it much better than you, except for it'll allow everyone to see the genius writing capabilities of Arik and what he's capable of communicating for very advanced technology that you could probably count on 2 or 3 hands of people in the world that would be at that level.
And I think it's just worth reiterating that what we will end up with is a completely brand new consensus mechanism, that it is not hot stuff. It is incorporating elements of hot stuff, but it is going to be totally homespun and enabling a lot of these really killer new features, and like instant finality with plus or minus 3-second finality, and enabling IBC, or we already have IBC, but it's going to make it so we can have really truly scalable horizontal scalability,
and possibly enable it on other chains, which is not currently possible. So, like you said, heavy lift, very heavy lift, and something we can't afford to get wrong. So thanks, Areg and Guillaume and everybody working hard on that.
Yeah, so I do, now that we're getting familiar with the software and getting into the new cadence here on YouTube, I do think that at some point in the near future that it would be great to have Bart on, potentially Arg if he has the time, but he's probably the most busy person in the entire EOS ecosystem. But it would be good to maybe bring in Guillaume, and because he's still helping out, obviously, but kind of bring in some of the engineers to explain how complicated and how high stakes this is. We all want hot stuff and instant finality yesterday, but this is like hearing Bart earlier on a call today, kind of, because I'm not getting regular updates on engineering. It's just not like on my plate. But today was the first time I've heard it in a while, and just we were talking to them literally about accelerating dates, even by like 1 or 2 months, and if that's possible. And the pushback from the engineer side saying, like, listen, you do like this is I can't reemphasize, this is as high stakes as it could possibly get, and it is literally not something that you can rush. That was my take home from it, and I think we do need to have an update on that from obviously the engineers, or Bart, who's also an engineer but CTO.
One other thing on that really briefly is just that I think a lot of people are really excited about some of the implications of this new consensus mechanism of the decoupling of the block producers and things of that nature. But we don't have, I mean, it comes down to the engineers are the most well suited to understand sort of the design criteria for making some of those adjustments. Like, should the network even desire to make them, like, down the road? And so it's really difficult to have that conversation without the engineers, because, you know, us non-technical folks can go off into the ether imagining all sorts of possible, you know, game theories and stuff, but have no basis in reality of how the network needs to function. So you and I, Zack, have lamented in the past, like, that sometimes the people we want the most in the chats are the engineers, and they're so busy coding the actual consensus layer that they don't have time to engage in conversation as much as we'd like. But that's just the way it is right now. So,
and yeah, on the, like, the governance topic, so I saw, I don't know if it was like a month or two ago, Liam's in the background, he's probably the most familiar with this one, but in the Telos community there was like discussion of changing some kind of not the consensus, but kind of block production governance, let's say, where they had to potentially hold a minimum stake of Telos, or I don't remember the full scope of it because I wasn't following completely. But my opinion on that is, even if you had the resources to do it, which is in our case the most scarce resources, engineering resources, you need to prioritize. So if you wanted to make changes now, knowing that the whole consensus layer is going to be changed in several months, it's just, for whether you're Telos, EOS, Wax, or any other Antelope chain, now's really not the time to be making those changes, knowing that you're going to have this new system in place very soon. And then if we wanted to even get ahead of ourselves and start thinking about, like, okay, once you decouple the block producer into these 3 different components, what could we do with that? And we could speculate. Brandon and I could have conversations. I think it'd be cool to have different consensus games, maybe use RAM holdings as a means of voting. Like, there's all these ideas, and I could talk about them, and I think they're cool, but they need to be vetted by the engineering team. It needs to be technically feasible. And then the other aspect to it is all of the existing infrastructure. So if you changed certain components, you need every block explorer to update their front ends, every wallet to potentially update. So there's a lot of other considerations to be made. But the number one thing is, as far as like what the priorities are, if you want to divert attention on other ideas, whether it's, I've seen people talking about, like, let's make Bitcoin, let's be a Bitcoin L2, or let's do ordinals. And I think there is something cool with ordinals, but I'm not an expert at. But anyway, all these ideas, and everyone has like this hot thing that we should be doing that maybe we're not. If we did that, you would need to take away from somewhere else. You can't just pull this human resource capacity out of nowhere. So you either need to pull back on EVM and adding new compatibility, like some of the updates that Nathan mentioned, or advancing the cross runtime communication, so that, let's say, if you have multiple EVMs on the same base layer EOS, so that they could communicate with each other and be interoperable with the native layer. all of that's really cool. How about connecting directly to Ethereum for an actual trustless bridge? Like all of that are things that we want. But if we wanted to pivot and prioritize something else, you would need to take away from that, or you would need to take away from instant finality and the timelines for hot stuff, instant finality. You need to take away from something to add somewhere else. And it's really a matter of prioritization is the number one thing. It's not that everything's not important. That's the problem, is that everything is important. You need to prioritize though, or else nothing's going to get accomplished. And there's just going to be continued delays on things. You need to stay focused, stay on the path you set out on, complete the work that we set out to do, and then we move on to whatever the next priority is on the list. Anyway, that's it.
Yeah, good rant. By way of analogy, I just think of like when I was interviewing Aaron and thinking about how long he's been building Wharf, or thinking about, first it was Wallet Plus, and this has been like a multi-year long process for him. I mean, ever since the beginning of EOS, he's been trying to essentially solve these problems, and only now did he get to the point where they're solved, and we can start building using those tools in the same way the consensus mechanism itself, or Leap 6 and whatever's in it, is another one of these things. It's been like a long, slow rolling process to get to that point. And I just hope that, like Aaron being able to build the house instead of building the tools, that our engineers and other EOS engineers will begin to be able to explore what can be built on EOS once this foundational component is in place. Because I think we are getting to that point where we will have reached. Nathan, I'd love to hear your perspective on that too. If you think are we gonna reach a development plateau where we can change focus a little bit from like the deep heavy digging?
I think that we have a lot of things which will open up the doors to possibilities that we currently have to just get past. As a developer, we kind of, it's not the whole like take a ticket and think only about the ticket, but the way that developers think, really, we focus on one problem at a time. At least the good developers, we focus on one problem at a time so that we can get past that to something else which is larger. And we do a little bit of thought about what's larger, but try not to dwell on it, because we have a deep understanding of the fact that things change during a process, right? Like you could write something on you could architect it on a board, and that's one thing, but actually implementing it, you start to understand. This is kind of exactly what happened with this update. You kind of understand exactly what's happening, exactly what's needed. And you can't possibly understand that stuff just from putting it up on a whiteboard or something like that. You can go as far as a whiteboard will go, but once you get into the nitty gritty of things, then you truly understand what it is that you're building. And once this is done, like you mentioned about, like, we could speculate about what we could do once we separate these into the three components, but that's purely speculation. Even as an engineer, I can tell you, I'm not quite sure how things would work afterwards. And I won't be sure until I can A, play with it, and B, see the final product, because the final product is never really like the specs. It just rarely happens that way. So but to answer your question, there's no plateau. There's never a plateau. There's always something which can be done on top of other things. Oh, I guess he left, which I didn't notice because I was full screen.
He left. Lovejoy, he's gone too. Lovejoy's still here. He's not on camera.
Oh, there.
Everyone's just dropping on us, guys. I think that may be a sign that we've gone.
The counter's going down.
We've gone long enough past our target time of an hour and a half. I think it's time to wrap.
Was that the target? An hour and a half?
I think it was.
I want to hit, just broadly speaking. So Celine said, Zach, where do you see EOS in the next year? I could just tell you, there are, if you look at like the blog rolls or the news feeds of a lot of the most popular projects in the space, a lot of what you see is just partnership, XYZ's launching on their chain. Like that's a lot of like what you see. And for the first time in a very long time, like there is an extremely long pipeline of those types of projects and partnerships. Just in the last like 2 weeks with CoinTR, PassPay, and then Spirit Blockchain Capital and all of their portfolio projects and the things that they are building, and with the board seat and the influence to be able to kind of direct them towards EOS. Like, we're literally sitting on, like, Brandon can attest to this, there's multiple projects that we're just like waiting to announce, or companies that are doing things that we're just kind of like waiting for either ink to dry, or people or projects to get their shit together on other things, or just timing. And there's going to be a continuous pipeline of that, because Labs has been doing such a great job of being aggressive with these partnerships, selling EOS to them, as far as like being the blockchain of choice for the EOS EVM. And that's one thing. We still will be able to strategically time the new brand guidelines and branding for EOS. One of the reasons we're not really talking about it is we don't really want to answer the question of when, because when is going to be when the market demands it. And just, I guess, as one consideration on when I think when would be the time is leading up to the next hard fork. You already need to contact every single exchange anyway, because every exchange is running a node. So at that time, since all of the exchanges will be being contacted for infrastructure, it'd probably be a good time to pass over new logos and branding and things like that. But making it an event and making sure it's done right. So that's something that's exciting. Having additional EVMs on the native EOS layer that I kind of hinted towards earlier is something that we'll see in the next year. Obviously, instant finality will be complete and deployed and hard forked in the next year. For the first time, having EOS altcoins launching and doing airdrops, being incentivized to do airdrops. Like, when Labs is negotiating with these projects, if they haven't already launched a token yet, they're basically negotiating for, you are going to set aside an allotment of your token to airdrop EOS token holders in some way. You may have seen this project called Ubox that's been working with Labs. They're doing an NFT sale right now to get special rewards and incentivizations. Another thing I'm excited about is very, very soon we will be making some drastic changes on our main Telegram group. So creating for the very first time an EOS global channel where we basically unite all of the different segmented groups and languages and labs and ENF and Turkey and China and Korea, bring everyone under one roof, because some of the feedback that we were getting from a lot of the projects that Labs is onboarding is it's very difficult for them to communicate with the EOS community because it's so fragmented and all over the place. So we're going to be pulling everything together under one roof in the very near future. And some really interesting Telegram bots will be integrated in that to basically make it very easy to register for airdrops, Telegram wallet integration for passing EOS tokens and EOS alts. So there's just so much like stuff, and I'm probably forgetting more things than I just mentioned here. So the next year is going to be very exciting, in my opinion. It's going, like, every year is exciting, but the next year there's just a lot happening. I think with Labs like only being around for 2 months, and ENV, even though it technically was funded a year ago, it took a lot of time to get a legal framework in place and get the corporate entities in place, and then to start going through all of that deal flow. So we're starting to see some of that with the Upland announcement, the Spirit Blockchain Capital announcement, and there's a couple other ones that we're just kind of waiting to announce. And then once we announce that, I'm really excited to kind of bring those projects on shows like this to introduce them to the rest of the community, because there's a lot of interesting things that'll be deploying on EOS. And that's that.
Some sound effects for those of you out there who are missing the sound effects today. All right, so we're going to try to wrap it up again, but I think this one is the actual wrap up to the show. So thanks to everyone who joined us in the chat. Lots of comment. It was great to see the engagement. Obviously, Zack, Brandon, Nathan, Yves had to leave us as well. Liam, big shout out to Liam in the back, did a great job of producing this show. I had a blast. Looking forward to doing it again in January. And, you know,
Mash the likes.
Mash the likes. That's right. If you like the show, definitely give us a like, a subscribe. And yeah, if we didn't get to your question, feel free to reach out to the ENF on Telegram at EOS Network Foundation. You can also join the Discord. Of course, there's the weekly office hours and where you can connect directly with the ENF team. And of course, the form to submit your questions for the next show. And also submit your ecosystem updates. Yeah, so I think that's gonna wrap it up for today. Any final words, guys, as we head out?
I think we hit the time queue. You said an hour and a half. I'm looking at the timesheet. It says outro at 6 p.m. We're at 6:03.
That's true. It's true. But there was a 30-minute section that was cut. But anyways, we don't need to go there. All right. This has been awesome. Thanks, everyone, for participating, joining, watching, liking, subscribing, all the good things. I had a blast. And until next time, let's go, EOS!